Habari gani, karibuni, asanteni kwa kuwa nasi. Thank you so much for joining us today on Kumbukeni, where we are reclaiming our narrative and telling it from our own perspective and countering the false narrative that Western media has propagated against us, our motherland, and our people. Today, I am really excited about this conversation because this is something you've all seen from our sessions with me alone, from our sessions with the Imagine Al Kelbulan. The one thing that we've been encountering is, someone has to get off, someone was kicked off, we are on the continent, so the internet is not working. So we need to talk about this. I'm joined by my brothers, Sidney Nicholas, Nicholas,
that's right.
Yes. Nicholas and Michael Thompson of OBT. I'm not even going to try that. I was going to do something, but I was like, okay, let me not start trouble. All right, guys, please introduce yourselves, my brothers.
All right, Michael, Sidney, you go first.
Yeah, sure. So, Sidney Nicholas, I am working as VP of Marketing for OBT Social.
Sidney, just turn up your volume just a little bit. It's a little distant.
Okay, let's see if I can. Is that better? I think it might be my microphone.
The mic?
Yes.
So when you held the mic and brought it closer to you, it was better.
Okay. How's that?
How does that sound to you, Michael?
Sounds fine.
All right, let's go.
Okay. All right. Good deal. Okay. Well, I'm happy to be here with you today, Nduku, and of course you, Michael. It's always good to have these conversations. But my background, I have a very interesting background. There's no doubt about that. But my professional career has been primarily in marketing. I started marketing it's been over 20 years now. When the internet came around and digital marketing started to become really popular, I got in at that time. I did all of it, from SEO to paid ads to social media marketing, pretty much everything that you can do in the marketing space, as well as offline marketing. And the last probably 7 or 10 years have been spent primarily on analytics. So the analytics side of marketing. Marketing is really a methodology for understanding the people that you're marketing to and making sure that they get what they want. So there's a psychological piece to that, and I was able to get trained in some tools, some psychological tools. Neuro-linguistic programming is one. Hypnosis is another one that I was trained in, and some other tools to just and the purpose of these tools again is to better understand the people that to create rapport with your audience so that you can make sure you understand what they want and what they need, and through your marketing efforts be able to get them what they want. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me. There's some other things that I'm sure will come out in the show, but again, Nduku, I'm happy to be here with you.
Thank you. All right, Michael.
All right. All right. Well, my background is more on the technical side. See, Sidney, he does all that stuff to make people want to get on the platform and watch what's going on, right? And so we have two different skill sets, and that's why we work well together. And we disagree on a lot of stuff, but we agree to disagree too. But that's what makes it good. But yeah, my name is Michael Thompson, and my background is in technology. I started in technology when I was, my first job was 16 years old at AT&T and, doing technology.
Easy.
And then I actually got my hands on my first tech when I was 13. So, been in it for a long time. I was at America Online before they were actually called America Online. They were called Quantum Computer Services. So I was one of those early people there. I was at UUNet and all these other companies back in the day in Northern Virginia. And that's pretty much where the internet really exploded and started, was right there in Northern Virginia. And I was one of the people that helped build one of the first internet exchange points on the planet. It actually was the first really major internet exchange point in Vienna, Virginia. So from that point, I did work for the federal government, building out networks, whether it was fiber optics, copper, satellite, CDMA, GSM wireless networks for mobile devices, point-to-point, just all of that, whatever you can imagine. Then I've held more than 24 different technology certifications. I've spoken at MIT at multiple occasions. trained more than 900 engineers on how to deploy high-speed internet, you name it, sold multiple companies, the whole 9 yards. So an extensive technology background, but the technology background can't go nowhere without people like Sidney that knows the marketing, analytics, and how to, get into people's minds a little bit, So, so that's me. That's my background.
That makes me sound a little spooky. It's not.
Well, not from my perspective. You mean like that.
That's nefarious. It does.
Right.
It does. You say MIT, and I'm reminded about this book, and I put the book in the comments section for everyone. Grab this book and understand how once again our innovation was pulled from under our feet and exploded, and still using our skills to continue exploding it while not giving us credit for it. So I'm glad we have both of you. As much as Michael is joking about him being the tech guy and Sidney being the marketing guy, it's going to help the conversation, right? Because if we're gonna sit here and listen to Michael with his tech all day, we're going to be like, okay, yeah.
Don't let Michael fool you. Yeah, he
that introduction with those terms he was throwing in, I was like, okay, I hope we don't lose our audience. And then myself and Sidney come in and we like bring in the fun stuff to neutralize it. So, Michael, the state of the internet, and you and I and Sidney have had conversations outside of here about our frustrations with the internet, and we are actually working with a company that is helping WanaUbuntu build our website that is in Zambia, right? So it's not that we're talking about something we're not experiencing ourselves, we're actually experiencing it ourselves. Mm-hmm. Please talk to us a little bit about your perspective on the state of the internet in WanaUbuntu, what you see the challenges to be, and what you think the possible solutions are. And then we can take the conversation from there.
Okay, well, the first thing I want to do is kind of qualify why I'm that person that can speak on that question. And when I first got involved with the internet, people used to come to me and say, Michael, is this domain name available? Because I was that early into the internet, whereas I knew all the domain names off the top of my head that were registered and unregistered. I used to, pretty much keep track of that. That's how long I've been in it. And I helped build a lot of the architecture when it comes to dial-up and all that kinds of stuff and the high-speed internet. So I saw the complete evolution of the internet. So my first time touching the internet was in 84 or 83? It was like 83 or 84.
I was only 3 years old, Michael. But go on.
Yeah, but that was my first time touching the internet. At that point, people had no idea what the internet was. And I used to tell people that one day they would have email, they would have computers in their homes. I told this to my parents, and my parents, they did not believe me at all. They said, we will never have a computer in the house. And so my aunts and uncles, they all said the same thing. So over time, more and more of the internet, started to grow. And then I knew this one guy, he lived probably 10 minutes away from me. He owned a company called Network Solutions, and we knew each other in passing, but Network Solutions was one of the first companies to manage domain names. So all the .coms and all that, you would get it from his company. And granted, this guy lived like 10 minutes away from me, right in my community. So he was one of those people. Then a lot of the people that actually engineered a lot of the internet, they lived in my community. Then when you looked at the first exchange point, that first exchange point was in my community. So we were right there at the very beginning, and the Northern Virginia area is home to, the federal government. So the federal government, they're a large user of the internet. So I had a chance to, see it grow from pretty much nothing to where it is today from a business perspective, a government perspective, and a consumer perspective. And just over time, I can remember how everyone was trying to predict which way the internet was going to go. And I also watched how it evolved, how we went from one speed to the next, from one price structure to the next, because people had no idea how to price it. So I was instrumental in a lot of that. And worked for companies such as AT&T, Bell Atlantic, Verizon, Cisco, Nortel, Lucent, Fujitsu, all the companies that actually help build the internet infrastructure. I worked with a lot of them, helped build data centers, and just pretty much everything you can think of that it would take to build the internet. So long story short, if I were to be dropped in the middle of a country right now, I could build the internet infrastructure from the ground up. I know how to architect it, deploy it, and everything else. So that being said, it puts me in a unique perspective so that today, when I'm being asked about the state of the internet on the continent, I can speak to it because the continent is approximately 10 to 15 years behind us when it comes to internet type of technologies, software, and everything else. And part of that is because of what colonization has done to us. Another part of it is that it's intentional to keep us behind, because technology is the deciding factor going forward as to whether or not your economy is successful, whether or not you as an individual or business is successful. Technology is it. And the internet has been proven to grow a country's GDP. So any country that has a high rate of penetration of internet access and faster speeds, they make more money. Those countries that don't have internet and they have slower speeds and a bunch of problems make less money and have a less educated population. That's just the way it is. So when we talk about the state of the internet today on the continent, it's sad. And again, it's for the reason of it's intentional, but then there's a part of that feeds into the whole corruption piece that kind of stifles the money and innovation that goes on. And then it's just the lack of understanding and knowledge of the internet and what the rest of the world sees. Because one of the things that Sidney and I have seen traveling back and forth is that on the continent, everyone lives in their own bubble when it comes to the technology and don't have that world view to see really what's going on. That's a danger. That right there in itself will get us enslaved if we do not step up to get a view of what the world is doing, because they're leaving us. And actually the word leaving us is wrong. They're leaving us from a technology perspective, but they're coming to take our land due to our lack in understanding of technology and how it is to be used and can be used. So the internet on the continent is the most expensive on the planet, but yet those on the continent have the lowest income. Like when you look at Europe, the Ukraine actually has the lowest income, and their income matches the highest incomes on the continent. Their lowest income matches Ghana and Nigeria. So their citizens earn about the same. And we all know that Ghana and Nigerian citizens actually earn more pretty much than everybody else on the continent for the most part. But Europe's lowest earning economy or country is the Ukraine, and their internet access is a fraction of the cost of what it is in Ghana and Nigeria. And that's not right. So that one little point shows that there's some intent there to keep us behind, and it's not fair. But like I always say, we have to stop complaining, because we know that we're being set up, when we just need to do for self. Really, it's going to hurt, it's going to be a little painful, but how much more painful can it really get is the question that I have. So that's just just a quick high level of what I'm thinking about internet on the continent today.
And it's better for it to hurt and you find a solution where you heal it than for it to continue hurting, because it, like you said, it's hurting right now. Mm-hmm. It's hurting us in so many ways, right? And therefore, if the solution means hurting a little bit so that we can stop hurting, I would rather do that than just continue hurting for centuries and generations to come. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Sidney, your perspective, being a WanaUbuntu an African man who sees it from a marketing point of view, and also working with Michael and definitely influencing each other by being together in the work that you do. What is your perspective of what is going on in Ubuntu?
Yeah, I mean, Michael and I are in total agreement about, what's happening, and how important it is for us to address these issues right now. And Michael said something that I've shared with a lot of people who currently live on the continent, and the idea of it seems far-fetched, but it may be the only solution in order to move us forward. But one of the things that Michael recommended is really just kind of cutting Africa off digitally from the rest of the world and building its digital infrastructure internally. And then once that's been secured, and goods, people can move throughout information can move throughout the continent, then you can reconnect those pipes to the rest of the world to be able to engage the rest of the world in trade and diplomacy and whatever else. But the challenge that we face, which I'm sure that everybody kind of already has is clear about this, is not necessarily what the white man or the Chinese man or anybody else has done to us. It's about what can we do for ourselves. And one of the things that we haven't necessarily articulated, to this point is, like, what does that mean? What does it mean when we're living the lives that we think we should be living? What is our goal? What is the vision that we have for ourselves? Because when you look at other communities, that's the thing that propels them forward, is their vision of, number one, understanding where they come from, which drives where they're going, but having a vision for where it is that they want to go. And we really haven't made it there yet. So that has an impact on internet, economy, energy, education, healthcare, all of the things that we say we have challenges with, are things that we have within ourselves to fix and repair. So I think, like Michael said, just the speed at which communications can occur when you have good internet will have a direct impact on your GDP, as well as your quality of life. So it's an imperative for us to get that straight, so that we can communicate with each other and share information in a way that allows us to continue to build.
I agree. Especially in this world where now you have modes of travel that now are becoming computerized, right? So if you don't have good internet to support that, and just about everything is becoming computerized. So it then means that we have to make sure that that foundation is solid, so that we can compete, or at least so that we can sustain our well-being on the continent. We're not even talking about compete yet. Let's talk about, first of all, managing our well-being, and then compete, right? Because we're not even at the managing our well-being. All right, so let's go step by step. Let's talk about each challenge one at a time. We have the infrastructure challenges, right? Which is what, Sidney, you were mentioning. We take ourselves off, we build the structure within, and then we reconnect. So what are the infrastructure challenges? And if you can use language that is like my grandma back at home will understand, let's do that, because I want them to understand what is going on, right? We want even the grandparents back at home in the village to understand what is going on. What is infrastructure, and what is infrastructure challenges?
First, I would say power. Nothing's going to happen without power. There's such a huge demand for power in general across the world. All of this artificial intelligence and electric cars and all of it. You know what I mean? There's a larger demand for power than there ever has been, and that's only going to continue to grow. So that issue definitely needs to be resolved. And then I would say. I would say you opened the show talking about us taking back our narrative, and I think that is one of the biggest hurdles that we need to overcome, is taking back, number one, getting clear about what our narrative is in order to take it back, and then applying that narrative towards our collective future. one of the things that I noticed growing up, in technology here is before you see something in our space, in our ecosystem, any kind of device or anything like that, you always see it in the movies first. You know what I mean? So, and the movies that are written by Western artists primarily, which is fine. I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with anything. They inspire young people to imagine what their future can be like, or how their future can change, and the cell phone to the computers to all of these types of things we saw in the movies before they were on our desktops or in our pockets. So really encouraging in an African context for people, and you and I were talking about this a little bit before the show, Nduku, but getting people to really tap into their imagination a lot more, and what the possibilities are, because everything that exists in the world today physically exists in the mind first. It has to be imagined, anything from a chair on up, and then of course there are things out there like trees and skies and clouds and things like that. Those are divine ideas. Those exist in the mind of God, which we have a physical experience of today, but it still exists in it exists in mind before it becomes physical. So helping people kind of take back the narrative, helping people to imagine what our future can look like, and then holding on to those things, so that we can drive these ideas that we have about our own communities into our future. So yeah, I would say, I mean, power definitely is number one. Changing how people think about the community around them, I would say, is very important. And then increasing the pace of how we move information. We've had conversations with a few of the governments in Africa, and one of the challenges that they have been dealing with is they have all of these different ministries, but the ministries can't talk to each other. So if the ministries can't talk to each other, if they can't store information and share that information with other ministries, then that means that they can't provide services efficiently, and they can't do the operations of the government efficiently. So, to Michael's point, just making sure that we are getting low-cost, high-speed internet onto the continent is going to be a huge game changer once we can get that worked out.
Yeah. Michael, the infrastructure challenges, and then we'll talk about also what barriers are there that we think are stopping us from getting the infrastructure, because you pointed out the challenges, Sidney, and as you're talking, I'm thinking IMF, I'm thinking all those things. So we'll talk about that once we hear from Michael. What is the state of the infrastructure, and what are the challenges, and what do we need to do?
Okay, like Sidney said, the first thing is electricity, because all technology runs on electricity. And for example, when I was just in Nigeria, the power outages, crazy. And I'm just like, man, it doesn't ever stay on. It's off more than what it's on.
We're going to talk about that. Yes, continue.
Yeah, and that is crazy. And see, part of that is because you have all these people at the top, taking the money that's meant for the infrastructure and putting it in their own pockets. That's one. Those people need to be dealt with in terms of vote them out of office, get them out of there some kind of way, and let that money go into the infrastructure as it should. Because right now, Nigeria is only producing 25% of what it needs in order to survive. And that's why you had those rolling brownouts continuously. The system is only pumping out like 4,500 megawatts right now. That's it. But it's capable right now of doing approximately 15,000 megawatts, which would help tremendously. But it's not able to do that because you have people stealing the equipment and copper and, climbing fences, cutting the wires and cables and stuff like that. So that's an issue.
So quickly on that issue. So with you, we're going to take it one step at a time. So quickly on that issue. What does it mean for the system to run at 400 megawatts as opposed to 15,000, as you said? What is that? Like, if you explain in layman's language, what is the impact of that?
Okay, well, 4,000 megawatts is not enough to run the country. So it only runs 25% of the country. So people wonder why the power keeps going out, it's only because 25% is available. So they have to share that 25% amongst the whole population.
So what you're saying, load shedding. So for example, Eastern Kenya, Western Kenya, Central Kenya. So when Eastern Kenya is getting load shedding, it's because they need to give it to Central Kenya because they don't have enough to give it to all of them.
Well, actually, I'm not even speaking on Kenya. I'm speaking of Nigeria, what I've experienced and know.
Right, but I'm giving that as a hypothetical. So let's say Wakanda, right? Because it doesn't exist. Let's say Wakanda. And in one section of Wakanda, there's load shedding, and in another section they have electricity. Is that because the government of Wakanda doesn't have enough to distribute to everyone, and therefore they're doing it in bits? Like,
that's correct. There's not enough to service everybody at the same time. Not even half the people at the same time.
How do we resolve that? What is the cause of that?
People stealing the money at the top, and then people stealing copper and equipment. And what needs to happen, like they did here in the United States, people used to go around stealing copper like crazy. And what they did was they made it illegal for you to buy or sell copper or any kind of power equipment. And you had to have a license. So if you were selling this copper, you had to have a license to sell it and a license to buy it. And if you did not have a license and you got caught, then there's stiff penalties. The same thing needs to apply on a continent. And when you make the penalties, you make them severe. The first time, that'd be a hard slap on the wrist, but the second time, you break them in half. That's what needs to happen. So that way, you know, someone can't say that they did not know. So we need to make sure that all of that infrastructure stays in place, because as Nigeria was starting to build slowly, then you have people stealing it. So you can never get ahead.
Good one. All right, continue with the infrastructure.
Yep. So with regards to electricity, we need to make sure that we get that whole situation resolved there. And from my perspective, I think that once you take care of the people at the top that's stealing, take care of the people that's in the community stealing, I think that each state in the country should be responsible for their power initiative, and that the federal government should step in to assist them, because some states just can't afford it. So they would need federal assistance. But I think if you do it at a state-by-state level, then what that does is it kind of spreads out the workload amongst everybody, and those that are serious will make it happen. And then those that are not, you know, that people will be sitting in the dark, because I don't think the federal government can take the whole task on themselves, because it's just like anything else. You divide the work, it's easier, you know? So I think that that's one of the approaches that they need to take in order to get this power going. And then they need to invest in these clean energies like windmills, dams, you know, and even nuclear power, because nuclear power, yes, it's a headache to deal with, but we have to get started because we're playing catch up. So we need to get that power and kind of do it like Burkina Faso is doing, where they're building a nuclear power plant, and then they're going to produce enough energy to help Mali, that's right next to them, you know what I'm saying, and Niger. So that is important and critical. The only part that I don't like about that deal, but I understand, is that the Russians are assisting them with that. We, as a people, don't have the skill set in order to do it ourselves. And see, that's another discussion why the diaspora needs to connect with our brothers and sisters on the continent, because a lot of us do have those skill sets that are needed, but then Western media has brainwashed so many of my brothers and sisters here, they don't even want to go to the continent, you know, and it's crazy. So to have these foreign nations building things for us is never good, because we live in a technology age, which means that they're going to say, to Burkina Faso, give us remote access to your nuclear power plants in case something goes wrong. But if Burkina Faso decides to turn their back on Russia, Russia still has a way into their nuclear power plant to shut them down. We're stuck again.
Thank you, Michael, for pointing that out. And I agree with you 100%. But regarding, you're talking about when you say skills, nuclear scientists, right? That's what you're referring to. And yes, I am aware that we do have them in our community. But unfortunately, like you said, the mindset, right? They don't want to go back home to help. And one simple way we can do this is you becoming a mentor for the children, at least in the Africana studies or African grounded schools. For example, the school that we had last week, the children in Freedom School in Nakuru. There's a school I just learned of in Benin that is also African grounded, but what we mean by that is their way of teaching is not Western, right? They're not learning about the several wars that happened in Europe and not learning about the revolutionaries in their own country. They're not learning the alphabet with A representing an apple when apples do not grow in their area, right? Things like that. They're not learning about winter, spring, and summer when they don't have that. So this is what we're talking about. But these skilled people, and I have reached out to a few people and said, like, just become a mentor. Just attend sessions, have sessions, even if it's once a month with these schools to talk to them about these different subjects, the internet. And if nothing else, we need to build a virtual school. I think we need to build a virtual school for our community, for those like you to teach the younger generation so that we have more people like you, right? Because once Michael Thompson is gone, we are out of luck if we haven't trained anyone else. And this is the mentality we need to have. And unfortunately, we have, and I like to call them the special Negro, right? Who gets very happy when they're invited at the table and referring to themselves as the only one. I'm the only one. I'm the first one, as if that is something special. And they want to hold on to that position instead of thinking, okay, I am here. I have the skill. Let me teach as many people as possible so that when I'm gone, you still have that skill.
Right.
You're talking, both of you mentioned electricity. And both of you with us have encountered load shedding, where one of the companies we're working with at home ends up having only 1 hour out of 8 hours in a day to work because they have 8 hours of load shedding. That means they have 8 hours of no electricity. And for the whole week, they've been getting 1 hour a day to work. And every time I get on the phone with them, my sister, I'm like, oh my God. Imagine the economical impact of this. This is one company. So imagine the many other companies trying to do work, the ones trying to produce food, the ones trying to manufacture this and that have to shut down or spend so much money to install solar or generators, right? Incur all those expenses just to function, just to run their business and to run operations. So that's a problem. Have you both heard, and I was trying to look up the river in Congo, that Kwame Nkrumah, I believe, and others said could run the whole of Africa. You know about that, as far as energy generation. So
yes.
Can you speak a little bit about that? How practical that would be, and if it's something that we as Africans need to start looking into as WanaUbuntu?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a combination. I mean, Africa gets a tremendous amount of sunlight. There are different areas in Africa where you do get, wind for windmills. I know the river that you're talking about. I can't call the name of it right offhand. Maybe someone can drop it in the chat. But yeah, that's going to be a part of the solution. And then there are a lot of other creative solutions that are out there. I mean, I know a gentleman here in the United States who has created a remarkable invention when it comes to energy and power creation and distribution. And and we've been working with him, and this is decentralized, so you don't have to create, you don't have to. So you're in New Jersey, correct?
Yes.
So you see the power lines everywhere, and you see the grid, and that we use in order to draw our
New
power.
Jersey is a little backward that way.
Yeah, yeah. And so these new technologies that are coming out as far as energy production goes, they don't necessarily require that type of infrastructure going in order to get energy to the communities. So so there's a lot. It's really just, so it's exploring the options that are out there, and again, it's imagining and designing new ways to bring power into our communities. And you and I talked about this again at the prior to the show, but we have minds. We have minds that are creative. We have minds that are imaginative, just like the Europeans or the Chinese or anybody else. So we can develop our own solutions. And it's about it's about number one, asking the right questions, because the questions end up driving our direction. Instead of saying, I can't do something, you ask, how can I? And yeah, just simply asking that question, you get information where we all can get information from, which is this invisible place that where we get our ideas from. So asking the right questions, um, uh, um, collaborating together, the whole unity part of it, and pooling our resources together so that we can fund some of these very smart people that are out there that have had solutions, for some time now. So I think there's a lot of solutions out there. And I just want to say this before I wrap up this part. There's a gentleman that I learned about some time ago. His name is Dr. Gabriel Oyibo. So Dr. Gabriel Oyibo is said to have completed the work of Einstein. So after Einstein created the theory of relativity, then he went on to create the theory of everything. And he spent 28, 29 years exploring those solutions, but didn't necessarily, find what he was looking for. This gentleman, Dr. Gabriel Oyibo, and he's a mathematician at a university here in the States. I believe he worked for NASA. I mean, if you Google him, there's a whole background on him. But he completed that work, and it's called GOGIT, which is God Almighty Grand Unified Theorem. So he, according to many, has solved this problem, which is an equation really for the theory of everything. And then, like, within that equation, there are solutions for energy. Creative solutions for energy, not using necessarily the equations that we learned from the West, and how they engage physics. But this is a whole other way of thinking about your environment around you, and how you use how you use the materials that are in your environment. So I think it's things like that, and then us supporting folks like Dr. Oyibo. Then there's a bunch of other people out there with the resources that they need in order to push their technologies forward, and then encouraging them to give back in a way where they're teaching the younger generation this technology, so that the younger generation can then apply their imagination to this new technology and start to create other solutions for us.
Exactly. And I'm trying to hold on to the thought with what you're saying, and also address this just in the audience. I just got reminded about the African, I'm going to put it in quotes so that I'm very careful, African Liberation Day, right? We intentionally chose not to celebrate it. We intentionally chose to have this conversation that is addressing a challenge that we are facing, and not celebrate African Liberation Day. Number one, there's no liberation, right? So let's stop this business of celebrating holidays just because someone has decided we should celebrate them. We as a community should say, no, we are not. If anything, let's just call it Africa Day, right? Where we sit down as Africans and say, okay, what is the state of Africa now? What are the challenges we are facing? What progress have we made? How much more do we need to work to get where we need to get to? And what practices do we need to put aside because they're not helping us? That's how we should celebrate Africa Day, and stop calling it liberation because you're not liberated. The psychology of that, and Sidney, who has trained psychologically, can say this. The more you say liberation, the more your psyche thinks you're liberated.
Absolutely.
Even when you're not. So you need to stop saying liberation so that you stop thinking you're liberated. Otherwise, we're not going to have enough soldiers on these streets fighting the war that we need to fight. That said, speaking of soldiers, something that people shy away from, and it's more fear than shying away from talking about, is the defense that is necessary for these conversations, right? The defense that is necessary for us to be able to take the dude who's working, the brother that's working in NASA, take him to Africa so that he can teach, and so that he can influence others and spread that knowledge. It's not just him who has it. The defense that we would need to take the brother who is in Zimbabwe, the brother who you mentioned that you know here, to go there and start putting up these structures, because we know on the continent are multiple US military bases, right? Multiple French military bases, multiple foreign military bases. And what those bases are there for, because you all think they're there to protect you. What those bases are there for is to make sure that you do not get to a point where you're so influential that you take away their position of power. That is their interest. They want to make sure that you do not get to a point of being able to detach from them. And the one big thing, if before we even talk about all this conversation we are having, right? Before we even talk about implementing, because if we implement in the current state where we don't have defense mechanisms, it's all for nothing. And Tulsa is a good example, right? So we need to be able to multitask and multi-think and multi-operate, where yes, we're talking about solutions for the internet, but what defense mechanisms are we putting in place to protect the ideas we come up with and the solutions that we come up with? So if both of you are willing to go there, let's talk about that. What do we need to do? And I know we're in a situation mentally where we've been taught by these Western folk to stay in our lane. There's no lane. Everything is connected, right? There's no defense. Defense is there so that it can protect capitalism, right? So that it can protect business. Defense is there so that it can protect the people. It can protect the healthcare. It can protect the business interests. So the two have to go hand in hand. What do you both think needs to be done on the continent, at home, for us to get to a point where we are defending her well enough to be able to start implementing these solutions?
Well, from my perspective, it is we need to stop being so naive. Stop trying to be so morally upright, because we have to know who we're dealing with. They've shown us for 400, 500 years. Everybody that can't understand that, they need to move to the side. They need to move to an island so they can be enslaved. That's where they need to go. Because we need to step up. We need to stand up. And when you talk about defense and everything else, let me just tell you what I see. And I will talk about the internet, okay? That's what this conversation is about, the internet. We have all these companies, European countries, these countries that were part of the Berlin Conference. They own the infrastructure in Africa.
Yep.
And I'm just like, the Berlin Conference only happened 2-3 generations ago. When you really look at it, those descendants are here today owning the infrastructure on the continent. So they own the cables that go around the continent. Those cables carry our economic information, like our money, our banking information goes across those cables. Our military communications goes across those cables. The connectivity to control our electricity and power grid goes across those cables. And those cables are owned by those who enslaved our ancestors and who colonized Africa. So why would you put your everything in their hands? That's what I don't understand. They put everything into their hands. So all they need to do is turn off their cable. Africa starves because we have nothing, no control over it. So the military can't do nothing.
Yep.
Because if you look at it, all those cables, again, are owned by European countries that colonized us. So they know that whoever controls the digital infrastructure controls everything. All of these intelligence agencies for all of these countries, the thing that they do is they always say, never let an enemy or potential enemy have a foothold into your infrastructure. So when you come here to the United States, all the fiber cables are owned by American companies. In China, all the infrastructure is owned by Chinese companies. Yep. In Russia, it's owned all by Russian companies. In Africa, it's owned by white countries.
Colonizers, yes.
So we're stupid and ignorant. I'm just putting it out there, stupid and ignorant. And that right there will cause us to be enslaved for 1,000 years. And it will be worse than the colonization that we just experienced. It'll be worse than the slavery that we experienced in transatlantic slave trade. And back to a point that you talked about earlier about mentoring young kids and teaching them what we know and everything else. See, theoretically, that all sounds good. But here's what the problem is, and I can speak on it because I'm experiencing it now. Mm-hmm. I have the skills to help build out the internet infrastructure on the continent. But yet, there's no way for me to get a green card on the continent without going through a whole bunch of stuff. I've been looking into it, I've been working on it and everything else, right? It is so much that I am to a point now, I'm ready to say, forget this. I don't need it, really. But,
even in Ghana?
Well, see, Ghana is the easiest. Okay, Ghana is the easiest, but they still have, they still have that time constraint, but they are the easiest. But I'm speaking again personally from like Nigeria, for example.
Yes.
We're talking about a huge market, a huge population of people, and a whole bunch on all the other ones for the most part. They have no mechanism to make it easy, because here in the diaspora, as you know, our attention span is like, if I got to do but so much, I'm not going to bother with it. Because if I, who believe in my brothers and sisters and working to help build up, get tired, jump through all these hoops, and it's just not clear, that causes a problem. So the governments on the continent need to figure out what are they going to do to attract the diasporans that have those skills.
Yeah. I think it's not just the governments, right? Because the governments we know are not working for us intentionally. They're not working for us. Right. So this is a solution that's the people on the ground. We need to start engaging with our diaspora friends and start, how in some communities, I'm not going to be specific to them, in some communities, they connect their children with each other for future business interests, for securing their families, right? We need to start thinking like that. If Michael is having a hard time getting a green card, who's that babe in Tanzania who can hook Michael up and we have that situation handled? This is like, we have to start being strategic and stop being embarrassed to think in that way. Stop being ashamed to think in that way. This is about liberation. There's no time for so-called morals when you're dealing with people who are immoral. So if you're a woman, if you're a man on the continent, connect with our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, help them get back home, help them be able to be there legally so that they can start helping with teaching and putting these solutions into reality. It's as simple as that. Stop waiting for the government. Let's start and I know there are people who are going, Nduku, you can't talk about that in public. No, I can, because I need to reach these sisters and brothers so that they start looking for these spouses who can come and teach us these skills. But go on, Michael.
Yeah, so it's just crazy. Even as a spouse, it's extremely difficult, so that's the bottom line. So that aside, when you look at like the security, there is no security for the continent in the position that we're currently in. And if this thing does not turn around within the next 24 to 36 months, there's no coming back from this, because it will be controlled by everybody else. And that's the message that we need to get out to our people. They think that they have time and all of that, but there's no time left, because I've seen how the internet has evolved. I can predict that timeline. That critical point is 24 to 36 months from right now. If we don't have control over that infrastructure by that time, they will control the economy, because they'll control the banking, the power, they'll control the medical record. Oh, the medical records. Let me just share this with you too. Now, the medical records, if it runs across all of their infrastructure, for example, because we don't own it, it runs across theirs. They have all these medical records of hundreds of millions of African people. Now, what that does is it allows them to feed that into AI, and then they can easily have AI extrapolate what they need to do to make bioweapons to target us based upon our melanin content. They've already done this with Project Coast. So they can actually do this with AI in a way that we've never seen before. Project Coast was successful in that they were able to create a bioweapon, but they were not able to disseminate it because they did not have the technology. The technology is there now. And see, so we need to be ever so careful, because all of our medical records will be in their hands. And then you'll have some of my brothers and sisters will say, well, the data is encrypted. Encryption means nothing.
Thank you for saying that. Say that one more time, because this is something
encryption means nothing. Because in 7 years, when quantum computers come out, all current encryption will be rendered obsolete. And there it is. Anything, any file can be broken in less than 60 seconds. Anything, based on today's technology in the next 7 years or so.
So, Michael, we're going to pause here. and let this sink in. You said we have 24 to 36 months to take action, or else we're doomed.
Yep.
Right?
That's it.
And I am in spaces, and many of us are in spaces sounding the alarm, and you have, and I'm sorry, y'all, today is not the day to be nice to you all. You have accommodators and people who are so fearful, they're letting their fear control them, talking about grace. Give grace. Meet people where they are. We don't have time to meet you where you are. In fact, you need to meet us where we are. You need to do everything to meet us where we are. We who are awakening, we who have awoken, do not have the time, as Michael has clearly shown you, to come back and get you. You all who look like us, you all who are WanaUbuntu, need to start getting a book, going online and researching everything that you're hearing Michael tell you, and learning and awakening, moving away from your Christianity nonsense, moving away from your Western nonsense, moving away from all this stuff that they've told you that you're holding on to that makes you believe they're nice. There's no time for niceness. Like, I know Mama Kanyisle said this in a session we had the other day. I wish I had a whip to whip you all into awakening. I truly do, my brothers and sisters. I wish I had a whip to just do shoop, and all of you awaken and realize that we need to start moving. 24 to 36 months is not a long time. I'm looking at my teenage children and I feel like I just walked out of the hospital the other day. And every time we get on these platforms and we talk about we are at war, every time we're on LinkedIn and everyone's like, oh, this is not how you talk up in LinkedIn. I don't care how people communicate in LinkedIn. I'm deciding how I'm going to communicate in LinkedIn moving forward, given the crisis we're facing. So we are at war. And when we are at war, we need to act accordingly. And unfortunately, my brothers and sisters, y'all are not acting accordingly. Michael, two things, and Sidney, please jump in too if you want to talk about this. Google's Project Tahara and Facebook's Express Wi-Fi.
Oh, all right, Sidney.
Well, I mean, you have the insight on technically on what this means for the continent. So if you can jump in and talk about those two programs.
Okay. Yeah, because see, now I don't know anything about those projects, but I can tell you this, right? When they provide something to the continent, it's not out of the kindness of their hearts. It's about control. So whoever owns the infrastructure, just remember this, whoever owns the internet connections that you're using, whoever you're buying it from, if they are from countries outside of Africa, then chances are they're being run by potential enemies and we're in danger. The only way to really do this is to have an African company or multiple African companies that have a vested interest. The owners of those companies live on a continent, and they have a connection to it. They need to own these internet companies. And I just want to touch on a comment that was made. Someone made a mention of South Africa in the chat. He said South Africa has a larger economy than Nigeria and Ghana. And see, and the thing is, they probably have more money coming in, but here's my response to that, and that is South Africa gets money from the West.
Thank you.
That's the only reason why they have the money that they have. They get it from the West. You take those Europeans out of there or whatever call them, they will be at the bottom, where everybody else. That's the only reason why they have a little bit more. That's why they have data centers. They have the best data centers on the continent because of the Europeans that are there. They know that it impacts the economy. So that's why they have the bigger, better data centers, more stable electricity and all of that. So that's why I didn't even include them.
And this is where critical analysis comes in, right? Where we just open our mouths and keep repeating these things. Oh, Rwanda is the most successful economically. Oh, Nigeria is the most successful. South Africa is the most economically advanced. But we don't stop and ask ourselves, okay, what is the difference between South Africa and all the other African nations? And this here is what you're pointing out. They have a large number of Europeans residing there.
Yep.
And how is that economy showing? And this is something that happens when Kenyans get on these platforms and talk about we have good economy. No, I'm like, no, we don't. Because when you look at the people outside of the Nairobi elite and the big city elite, in this case in South Africa, when you look outside of the white folk, all you see is suffering. All you see is struggle. And therefore, yes, they're talking about the economy, but what is the GDP, right? What those fine numbers that talk about individuals, how does that look like? And we never stop to ask ourselves that. And this is I'm glad you pointed that out. South Africa is the way it is because it has a majority of white people living there. And these white folk are helping their white folk. And it goes back to what I always say. We need to kick them off our continent if we're going to heal and restructure. We have to kick them off the continent. Go on, Michael.
Yep. Yeah. So, when we look at just everything that's going on, again, we just need to take care of that power situation, handle this internet. And the last piece of this is we need to make sure that we take care of our mobile devices. And the mobile devices are critical because right now, those mobile companies, those wireless companies, they're owned by Vodafone, which is European, Orange, European, all of them are European. MTN has the largest number of African people on their staff. So I would say that they're okay, but they, you have to look at who's funding them. That's the part that I don't know. And when I look at the infrastructure that MTN has put into place, it's still way behind what we have elsewhere in, European and Western countries and even Asian countries. So it's way behind. But the phone is the most dangerous device out here because all your data and information is stored in there. So they have access to all of the information on your mobile device. And I just read an article 2 days ago that stated that the fight in the Ukraine between the Ukrainians and the Russians, soldiers were actually able to be pinpointed their locations because of their mobile devices. Their mobile devices gave their positions away, which allows them to be attacked. So I have those articles and studies and all of that kinds of stuff, right? So that being said, I have this material that you wrap around your phone, right? And it disconnects you from the network. And see, people used to always say to me, they would say, well, a cloth doesn't look as neat as a bag. Like, create a bag out of it. But see, if you have that cloth and you wrap it around it, it's like the size of a handkerchief. You wrap it around it, stick it in your pocket. You can't be tracked or anything like that. And
we need to talk, Michael, like ASAP. We need to talk. We have 24 to 36 months, so we need to talk. Okay, go on.
Right. So, but then if you made it into a bag kind of when you close a bag, it kind of wears out and, and it might not have a perfect seal. And people don't realize radio frequency, if you have a hole the size of a piece of rice, that phone will connect to the network and you'll be able to be tracked. But when you have to wrap it in a handkerchief type of thing and stick it in your pocket, it's off the network. So that's why I'm keeping it in that manner. But I'm going to send you that article that talks about how those Russian and Ukrainian soldiers were being tracked through their mobile devices. All of us are being tracked like that. All of our information is being sold. We just did not know that it was being sold, that it's being sold to all kinds of third parties all around the world. So that's why I say mobile devices are very critical because you always have them with you. You can be tracked at any time. The information on there has all your contacts, your personal emails, your fingerprint, your face, all your biometrics that's needed. Yeah. So we need to look at that as well. And we need to have African companies provide the services to its people, not the Western powers.
Yeah. And the advice there, Michael, as you say, we need African companies. Please, African companies that start building, stop connecting with Western people in your companies, because that's not helping. You need to be devoid of Western influence in your organization. So it has to be pure WanaUbuntu organization. I don't care how nice that white person is, please. They can come to the barbecue, but when it comes to preparing for this fight, no, please do not invite them to that space. Sidney, please. And
I'll jump in and I'll jump back on the psychological, how psychology will help us be more secure. Because as we were talking, I was thinking, like, for instance, China, like if someone was to ask, what is China's evolutionary path? we could probably chart it out. We have a general idea about how they conduct themselves, the types of things that they're doing, like what they're looking to build themselves into the future. If we ask that same question about Europe, we would have an answer. Like there's an evolutionary path. I mean, there's AI because these are Europeans that are creating these technologies, artificial intelligence, new ways of generating energy, like all of these things, getting to space, all of these are the things that are important to them because it's along their evolutionary path. And the question that I have is, what is the African's evolutionary path? Because one of the challenges that we have with security is that we don't have anything to protect. You know what I mean? It's like when you got something to protect, then you tend to.
But we do. That's the irony, Michael. Sidney. We do.
Yes.
We have the most to protect.
Yes, but we don't.
Our people. We have the resources on the ground. We literally have our motherland. But go on.
Yes, but we don't. So yes, yes.
Break it down.
Yes.
Make that make sense.
Yes. All of it is there. There's the resources. There's black minds and bodies. There's our rich history. We have all of these things, but we don't look at them in a way as being a part of our evolutionary path. Like they're there, but we don't like, we're not connected to them. That's why we don't protect them. And I know we don't protect them because it's apparent. We don't protect. In Detroit, Michigan, where I am right now, Detroit metro area, black men don't protect black men, unless of course you're part of the same group, maybe, you know what I mean? But we also shoot each other, you know what I mean? You look at Africa, you have all of these minerals in the ground that they're not being protected. Africa is opening itself up to everybody. It's like, come get it out of the ground and take it away, raw materials, and take it back to your countries, make it better, enrich it, and then sell it back to us at a much higher price. So those things are there, but based on our activity, we are not connecting with those things in a way where they're connected to who we are in our evolutionary path. Because if they were, then we would be more diligent about making sure that other people weren't coming in and taking those things.
And as you're talking, I just put a book in the comments, and it's funny because this book is not published yet. It's the first book that WanaUbuntu and friends are going to be assisting Mama Kanyiside to publish. We actually currently have a fundraising campaign to support the publishing cost. But in the book, because I'm editing, in the book, she talks about this, the African innovation, the African creations, the African wealth we built. And she writes in the book, devoid of, which I love that she's using that word, devoid of Arab and Europeans. Devoid of Arabs and Europeans, we achieved all of this. And it's very important for those of you who talk about why are you studying? Why are you going back? Why are you looking into history? Let's forget about it and move on. We cannot forget about it. Because when we forget about it is when we fall in the trap that Michael and Sidney both described, where we are today. So we have to go back and remember how valuable we are so that we can realize how much we need to defend that value, right? Without that realization, we're going to just be walking around like business as usual, right? Business as usual. So we have to reclaim, we have to return and understand our value, see the value that we have, own it and know it, so that we can start building defense mechanisms.
Absolutely. And one of the things that it struck me when I was in West Africa is there was no African symbology. And what I mean by that, like the English language is symbology, right? It's symbols that represent concepts and ideas depending on how you order those symbols together. But when I was in West Africa, the countries that I visited, there was no African symbology. So how can you liberate yourself through your oppressor's language and symbology? It's an impossibility. So like the things that our ancestors have created, they're there. And that's why you look back, because that's our symbology. They're concepts that cannot be expressed in English or French. They can only be expressed in African symbology and African language. So it's important, or can't be expressed in Chinese language or any of the other languages. So it's important that we we capture those ideas, because another thing that you said about, some groups out there teaching their kids, at very early ages, how they participate, within their community and within the world, in general. Like, those are the types of things that we need to get clear about, and we need to understand, as a group, the importance of those things to our group. Why is the conversation about Egypt important to us, or any of our ancient civilizations that we tend to elevate? Why are those things important to us? Because they give us an evolutionary path that was interrupted by other people, that we need to continue on that evolutionary path. And we're all going somewhere. Europeans, China, all of us are going somewhere. But it's very difficult to get there if you don't know where you start from. So me being where I am right now, I know how to get to Chicago from Detroit,
Yep.
But if I don't know where I am and someone says, I need you to get to Chicago, then what do? I don't know how to get there. So I need to know the starting point in order to understand, in order to get where it is that I'm going. You can't get where you're going without having the starting point.
I love that analogy. Yes. Yeah. All right. I don't even think our time is enough for this conversation. You too, you have to come back. Like, you literally have to come back next month. We're gonna have you once a month. We'll break it down. No, I'm not even kidding. Now this is unfortunately, I am one who promotes that we need to work together, but this is the freedom I get if I'm the only host of Kumbukeni. I can be just like OBT. We're going to make that decision right now. Every month we're going to have a session with OBT, since we have only 24 to 36 months to figure out the way forward, right? Affordability and accessibility. I feel like now that we have laid down these other points that we mentioned, I almost feel like these other conversations are just useless at this point. Almost like we know they're there, but until we figure this out, until we find a solution for this, we shouldn't even have this conversation. But let's have it. Affordability and accessibility.
Well, when it comes to affordability, let me tell you, right? Here's what's crazy. Now, say again, I'm using Nigeria and Ghana. The average person in Nigeria and Ghana, they have to spend, to get the kind of internet that I have at home, not even that, it'd be a fraction of that. They have to spend more than 150% of their monthly income to get something that's semi-comparable to what I'm experiencing here. But
pause real quick.
Okay.
Because sometimes we say these things and then they just fly over our head.
Okay.
150% of their monthly income. Their monthly income is 100%, which means it's impossible.
Right. Exactly. They have to spend a month and a half of their salary in order to get a somewhat comparable internet to what the West offers, which is totally crazy. People can't afford that. But see, that same internet only accounts for less than 3% of my income, as it if on an average basis here in the United States. So if you look at it from that perspective, you see that the deck is loaded, in terms of, it's against us, it's stacked against us. Because if someone, like, say, for example, the average income, we'll say in Nigeria, is $2,500 a year in US dollars. And then that breaks down to be, we'll just say, wow, $200 a month. Not even that, really. We'll say $150 a month. Okay. If the average income is $150 per month and your internet is $200 a month, it's not affordable. You're going to eat and you have to pay rent and everything else first. But that $150, $200 that I pay is only a fraction, like a tiny fraction. So I guess what I'm saying is it's off balance. So to give you an example, to make it clearer, Ghana and Nigeria, we'll say Nigeria, they pay $4.39 per megabit per second. Okay, $4.39 per megabit. That's the way we'll put it. I pay about 39 cents per megabit. It's like, why is that whenever we make so much more here? But yet you're going to charge them more than what they make, in a day. You know what I mean?
It's so intentional and so, what's the word? What's the word? Sadist, not sadist, but so evil. Let's use evil. So evil that it's frustrating our people don't see it.
Yeah, and let me throw this in too. You remember the power outage, not power outage, but the internet outage we had about 8 weeks ago on the west coast of Africa. See, that was intentional because there was a pattern to the outages, and a lot of people don't understand that. That one outage cost Nigeria $500 million. Just that one outage cost them $500 million. They don't have $500 million. They could put the $500 million into electricity and power up some places, but that's what they lost during that outage. Then we had an outage about a week and a half ago on the east coast of Africa. And, you know, they're talking about cables being cut in both places. It doesn't happen like that. I personally feel that there's some kind of testing going on.
I agree.
What the people will take. And they're saying to themselves, these fools will take whatever we do to them. That's really what I believe is being said. We can do what we want, is what these other people are saying. And because there's no way you're going to have a severe cut on the West Coast only 8 weeks ago, and then another one on the East Coast. How come we're not getting those cuts off of the East Coast of the United States or the West Coast of the United States? Those are the same cables. They're not cutting them over here.
Here's the solution. I'm not even going to ask you. Here's my solution for that. All African nations, and I know I'm not just talking to the leaders, I'm talking now to the people. We must get all Western military bases out of Africa yesterday. Forget about tomorrow, forget about in a month. We have 24 to 36 months. They have to go. They have to pack. We all have to follow Burkina Faso's example. But even better than Burkina Faso, we're not inviting the Russians. Right? We can communicate with the Russians virtually, but, and again, this is what I'm talking about. When you start building those structures that are going to be building the defense, they cannot be a part of it. Let that Russian come and train us. Let us learn the technology. Bye-bye. Thank you so much, Russian. We're going to be with you and support you against the US, but ciao, go back to Russia, right? They cannot, you cannot give them passwords. You cannot give them access to your system. They cannot have control of the system. But immediately, as soon as possible, all foreign military bases must go, because that is who has access. Mm-hmm. Google, Facebook, they all have spaces in those bases. Yeah. So we have to shut down all, and I mean all Western, all foreign, including China, all foreign military bases, including Middle East, all of the foreign military bases on the continent.
Yeah. And see, the thing is, people have to understand that this is not about hating or disliking anyone. It's about doing for self. See, that's where everybody's going to twist it. Because if other people heard this conversation, they will say, "Oh, you hate."
It's no racist.
It's about us doing for ourselves, because it's like how everybody else did for themselves. We need everybody to leave us alone and let us sink or swim. It's, you know, it's one way or the other, but we have to have control over our own destiny. You know, so that's the way that it has to be. And that's how the rest of the world has to look at it, but they won't, because they want what Africa has. Africa has to say, we don't need the rest of the world. The rest of the world needs us. We're willing to talk. We're willing to exchange and trade fairly. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. And see, that's the point we need to drive home, but we need to stand up. And for those that are within our ranks that are treasonous, yeah, they need to be pushed to the side and let them go.
A solution for them. Go ahead, push them to the side. But yes,
yeah, because there's a lot of us that, you know, fight against us having our own independence and doing for self. And then also, I want to make a comment on earlier when you said like how you know, some people need to forget, like, you know, Christianity and stuff like that. Now, the way I see it is, it's because it's been westernized. Mm-hmm. Because I believe in the God of Israel, I believe in Christ, but I believe in fighting for what's right. I believe in standing for myself. I believe in kicking somebody in their back if they're going to kick me in mine first. You know what I'm saying? So
Jesus himself whooped their behinds when he went into that space where they were acting a fool. We all know that.
And see, a lot of people make it so that Christianity weakens them. Like, they're like, if I fight back, I'm not being Christ-like. No, you need to stand up for yourself, protect yourself, and protect the weak. You know, because I run across that a lot. They'll say, "Oh, just pray about it." No, you pray about it and then you act on it. If you got to break somebody in half, that's what you do. I mean,
and the irony is the ones who brought Christianity to the continent are not sitting around and turning the other cheek.
No, because what they did was they twisted the definition and meaning of it because they did not understand the culture. So they twisted it to their benefit. But if you look at the original context, hey, it makes it clear, don't sit around and take, a beating from somebody, So I just wanted to interject that. But I'm telling you like this, we as a people need to unify regardless of what we believe, what our backgrounds are and all of that, come together because to everybody else in the world, we are the same. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah. And given the dire situation that we are in, again, I'll keep saying this and moving on. Every show I'm going to say we have 24 to 36 months to get us. First of all, we don't have 24 to 36 months. 24 to 36 months is the deadline. So we have today. We have today to take action. We literally have today. So for those of you who are skilled in the community, and every time we reach out to you, you're talking about how much are you going to pay me? Please stop asking that. Because we do not have the money to pay you, but we seriously need your skill. So come and put your skill in the work, and then we build this thing and you can get paid later once we've built it. But right now, we all need to bring our skill, whether we are being paid or not, for the sake of our liberation. All right, what's the other one? One more, and then we go to the audience because we're almost out of time. And again, every month we're going to bring you, every month. So both of you, we're going to talk about what time is best to bring you on. And clearly in the audience, we need this conversation in other spaces. I'm going to connect you with other people and we're going to have this conversation. And like I said, WanaUbuntu, this is going to be a conversation for you. It's going to be in a space for us where it's just us so that we can talk real talk. And when you're invited, show up. Technical literacy. So I recently was talking to a brother, which is my interest in the internet and in these, I call it because I understand the internet is the language of the West, right? In virtual communication grew, or my concern grew even more when I was working in the federal government and I saw what they could do. I'm going to give that. I'm not going to specify where I was working, but when I saw what they could do, I was like, and every time someone is like, oh, I'm going to Telegram because it's safe. I'm like, there's no place that is safe. None. In the current status, they can access everything. Everything.
Yep.
They can access it. So I have been told that apparently majority of our people are in the field of building software and don't know how to code, and that's intentionally done. That our people that are not being trained to code, and most of them just focus on software building. But we need more coders so that they can build the language. Now, Michael, you're one of those people. Talk about technical literacy and how that is a challenge and how we need to overcome it.
Okay, for example, how you said, like when you talk about Telegram and people talk about moving there because it's more secure, we're actually in the final stages of finishing our version of WhatsApp. So it'll be finished probably within the next 5 days. We're testing it right now.
I'm looking forward to it. And we'll talk about OBT Social. Thank you. Go on. Mm-hmm.
And, it has full encryption and everything else. But the encryption is no weaker or stronger than what's out there on the market. The only difference is that we're not going to be storing your data on servers to be decrypted later. So we're not going to be doing any of that kinds of stuff. When you talk about technical literacy, see, we need people that can code because AI is the up and coming thing that's happening actually right now.
Yeah.
And AI, whoever owns AI is going to win. And AI itself will probably end up getting out of hand. And the only way to defend yourself against AI is to have your own.
Yep.
So nobody else will build the AI for us but us. But we don't have many experts to do that right now. And we have a platform that is AI driven as well. And we have a roadmap so that we can have our own architecture within the next couple of years. But I'm saying this to say, we need to learn how to code because we need to have all of our own stuff because we can't trust anyone else to do it for us or to protect us because no one has protected us for 400, 500 years. No one has stepped up. So we have to count on ourselves. So coding is critical, but that can't take place until we get stable power and reliable internet that's cost effective.
And first and foremost, defense. We need to start. And no matter how crazy or out of this world the idea of Africa being able to defend herself against these, you all believe, nuclear powers seems, we need to get started. We cannot just sit and say, oh, we can't fight them, they have nuclear. No. All right. Sidney.
Yes, I'm in agreement with you. I mean, there's nothing that's impossible to us. Everything that we all have in our lives, we thought about before they, showed up in our experience. If you have a college degree, that college degree didn't just pop up. There was some time when you were in school and you decided that you wanted to go on and get a college degree. You enrolled in college, you completed the courses, and you got a college degree. So our ability to bring about the things that we want in our future is with us the same way that it is with all other kinds of people. So that I'm just saying that to say that there's nothing that's impossible to us. It's just, again, asking the right questions. It's not as much like we can't do things. If you just start asking the question, how do we, you'll start getting more answers. You start getting different answers about how to move forward. As far as the education goes, it's huge. I mean, the countries that I visited recently, 40% of one of the countries was illiterate. Couldn't read. 40% of the people couldn't read and write. Another country that I visited, we were driving around, and I remember the folks that I was traveling with asked. This was about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And he asked, he's like, why are all of these kids out? Like, what is going, why are all of these kids around? And then we learned later that they can't attend school because they can't afford it. So you have to pay to go to school. You don't get a free education. So how can you possibly build an economy when you're not building skills to be able to manage and grow that economy? It's huge. It's huge. And it doesn't matter what we do on the outside if we don't support that by educating the people to take over those systems and that infrastructure. Then it's something that might last half a generation before it crumbles again. So the technical skills are huge, and then looking into the future, not what's going on now. I mean, AI is the buzzword, the popular thing, but can we again think about what's important for us to have for our own evolutionary track? What's important to us? And then build the technology that supports us getting where we want to go. Because one thing I'm certain of is that Africa does not want to be America. As shiny as America might look, Africa does not want to be America. Exactly. So we have to get back to the things that are important for us. We've always been, kind of communal people at some level. We've always, had families that we respected everybody in our families. And you'll notice that other groups don't necessarily relate with each other in the same way that we do. So we have to start, we have to recognize what's important to us, how we do things, and then we develop technology based on how we see ourselves being in the future, and not how America has done it or China has done it or anybody else has done it. We have to do it our way. And again, I think that's important for us to start having those conversations to figure out what that looks like, because I don't think anybody can articulate that vision right now. I haven't heard anyone that's articulated. We talk about liberation and getting away from, under neocolonialism, or, here in the States, being our rights being stripped away, all of those types of things. But no one is articulating a vision for Africa that's big enough to hold all Africans in it. So until we get that vision, we're probably going to continue to be, not unified, because the thing that's going to unify us is that vision that holds all of us in it.
And here is a thing, and I truly believe defense and education are great places to start. There's a few basics, and we can all sit down and figure out what are the 5 things that we must start working on now, right? The internet is clearly one of them. But education is also most definitely one of them. And what we're trying to do at Mbongi Ubuntu is make sure that each and every of the 54 African nations has an African-based education school. Even if it's just one, we have to start somewhere. So now we have one in Kenya. We have to take and ask them, what were your challenges when you started? What were your wins? How have you gotten where you are? How can we duplicate that everywhere? And then we have to start talking to these so-called leaders and see how, and actually, I don't think we need that, because I don't think they had to go through that, but we can find out once we sit down with them and figure out how we can get them in every other African nation, at least one. That should be a goal. And I'm saying this knowing that it needs money. And I'm reaching out to the community. And I don't know when you all are going to wake up, and I'm really looking forward to you waking up, because you need to wake up. Each of us, there's millions of us, WanaUbuntu, on this planet. If each of us give $1, that's millions of dollars that could go toward this work. So we have to, and stop asking, oh, if I give, what am I getting in return? That nonsense. What am I getting in return? What you're getting in return is liberation. What you're getting in return is us overcoming the challenge that we're facing, that in 24 to 36 months, we're going to be taken over. That's what you're getting in return. So when we say we need schools in each African nation, we need you all to send the money, right? Whatever we decide we are going to put together so that we can build those schools. When we announce, we need you all to send the money. It doesn't matter if you're sending 50 cents, just send whatever you have so that we can build. Let's talk about, go on.
Yeah, and Duka, I just wanted to jump in really quick as well. Being here, I've been able to connect with some folks that have money, and right now, out of that the money that they have, they've already committed about $6.5 billion towards projects. This is money that we have access to. There's a certain structure that you have to go through in order to get that money, but that money is available. And even as people, send in money to different causes, there's a way that we can protect their money so that they always get their principal back, because that's been one of the challenges as well, because I know of other organizations specifically that have preyed at some level on African Americans with giving money, for the continent, and then that money just like disappears into thin air, so there are some methodologies that and some programs that exist where we have money. And then, to that point as well, industrialization, and because everybody talks about the natural resources in Africa, the human resources, the human mind, the black folks' mind, as well as the natural resources that are in the ground. What people have to understand is that the way that you convert natural resources into liquidity is through machines. So the reason that the United States is where it is today is because we industrialize. We have machines that allow us to convert our natural resources into machines that create liquidity. So the same is necessary for Africa. So the gold that's in the ground, in order to enrich that gold, you have to have machines. In order to process agricultural goods, you need to have machines. So because Africa is going to industrialize, and it's been said that that's been one of the weapons that's been used against Africa, is to keep Africa from industrialization,
Industrializing.
industrialization, so that these other countries can come over and continue to pull the resources out of the ground, and then take those resources to market and make a lot more money and be able to feed their people and put their people to work. So there's a huge amount of money that exists in all of these African communities, but it's very important to understand that, like, one of the paths that need to be taken in order to move forward is industrialization, because once you industrialize, I'll get it. It's up there. Let's try to get out. Industrialize. Then the money that we talk about becomes abundant in the community, and then once people are eating, they have a roof over their head, and they have some leisure time. You know what I mean? They have some time to sit and think. Then a lot of the innovate. Thank you. Then the time is available for them to innovate, and then we can compete with the rest of the world in all of these technologies that are coming out.
Oh man, brothers, I was excited about this for this reason, but it's a lot. Okay, let's talk about OBT Social. let's talk about OBT Social. And by the way, if you do so, here's the thing. Like I know it sounds like a threat. It actually is a threat. I can't do anything to you because I'm here. But the way it's a threat is in, if we don't do it, 24 to 36 months, and there are special words that I can use. We are there, fill in the blank, but we don't want to be that, right? We want to be able to speak for ourselves, determine for ourselves, do for ourselves without being under their control. Let's talk about OBT Social. I have an account on OBT Social. We on WanaUbuntu were building our website, and some people in the community, not WanaUbuntu, but in a project we're all working in, we're like, okay, we can't build a website on OBT, or because we faced some challenges, right? Why don't we go? So we have to be patient with our spaces. And I was patient, and Michael and Sidney helped us. And the company working with us, Liseli J Branding in Zambia, our sister Liseli, was patient as well. And because we were patient and we tolerated each other and we understood the challenges, but we understood the importance of this being done in a space that is blackety black, we were able to finally get the website up. We have to stop acting like spoiled brats, because that's what we're acting like. WanaUbuntu. You're acting as spoiled brats because you're used to Twitter, you're used to Facebook, you're used to all these other spaces that have billions of dollars to back up making them as fast and efficient as they are. So you don't want to give the money for OBT Social, Abibi to me, to be as fast as they can, those other companies, but you want to sit and bitch about it. I'm just going to say it. So pick a lane. If you're going to complain, send the money. Right? If you send the money and nothing is being done, you have earned your right to complain. So it's as simple as that. If you're complaining and you didn't send the money, just shut up and go get some lunch or something. All right, OBT Social.
Yeah, so thank you for that, because yes, we've had our our challenges, and our challenges more or less come in with not having the funding, the billions of dollars for the customer support. We have the technology because we built the technology to rival theirs every way, shape, or form. We have the same size servers that they have. We're in the #1 data center on a planet when it comes to internet connectivity. 74% of the world's traffic flows through where we are. So when you go and look at OBT Social servers, you walk past Facebook, Microsoft, Cisco, Verizon, and all the rest. We're in there with them. So we made sure that all of that was done. But see, and I just keep it real. Our problem comes in is with not having enough manpower to sometimes reply as quickly as we would like to. And then just like Facebook and all the rest,
I'm willing to help, and we can find other people, but go on.
Yep. And just like Facebook and all the rest, at their start, they were a lot worse off than us. And people just don't know because they weren't dealing with them at that point. But they're looking at us and saying, well, I have to wait a little longer for this or this. But the thing is, you have security. You have people that's going to look out for you. You have people that's going to listen to your ideas and thoughts and look like you. Facebook and all the rest, they just want your money so that they can take that money out of the continent and take it into Europe. Or the Chinese take it into China and say, later for y'all black people, y'all pay us and we take the money out. That's what they're doing. But see, OBT Socials, what we're doing is we're working to really build a continent and a diaspora, because a lot of people don't understand that Google, Facebook, and all the rest of them, they're more powerful than most nations of the world. The only nations that are more powerful than them would be like the United States, maybe China, but there's not much more, that's more powerful than them. So that being said, Africa needs companies. They need their own Facebook, their own Apple. They need all of that. And then those companies that are black owned will become powerhouses in the world stage, as well, and be more powerful than many nations of the world. And, and they'll be on the side of Africa because they will be African people. So that's what OBT Social is doing. We're working to make sure that we have our own cables and infrastructure around the continent, that we have our own applications and software, whereas we control where this data is going, where it's being housed, how it's being used. We're also looking to build a multi-trillion-dollar company, whereas that money stays on the continent. Because again, like I mentioned, when Facebook, Google, and all the rest of them sell services and products on the continent, Elon Musk and all the rest, they take that money back home, which means
Hold on.
money leaving.
Are you looking to build that company at home on the continent?
Yeah, that's really,
we need to talk.
That's really where I wanted to be headquartered, somewhere on the continent. And because right now, of course, it's in the US because this is my home, you know, but at the end of the day, I want to reside and live somewhere on the continent, have that business there. But then there's other things that has to take place, like power and everything else, you know, so it's, you know, it's a chicken and egg situation, but you know, we're willing to work through it. But see, OBT Social needs the support of the people. And we're going to be hosting an event in September in Nigeria with a lot of the influencers and, you know, some of the celebrities and all of that. And the whole goal is to just create awareness of what we are doing. And we're going to be focusing on our TikTok-like platform, because that's what all the young people want, and our WhatsApp-like platform, because that's what a lot of people use. So those are the two most important platforms from our perspective for the continent. And that's what we're going to be pushing. And we need everyone to help support that by getting onto the platform. And we're also working to go public as well. And we're allowing people to invest into OBT Social. And, you know, and what that does is it makes it so that the company is not just one person or 5 people, it's a collective. So therefore, no matter what happens to that one person, those 10 people or 20 people, the business still goes in a direction where it was intended to go. Yeah. So that's the purpose of having people invest. So people can invest anything from like $100 on up into OBT Social. And it's just one of those things that's for us. And also, if we have ideas, because we're creative people, we can build these ideas. And our ideas are quite often different than those of those in the West, because we're creative people. Everybody follows what we do. So, and we just need to take this opportunity to really step up and show the world that we can control our own platforms, that we can build our own platforms, and that we support our own, and to keep all this data, because data is the key. They put all these apps out here to get data, but everyone needs to keep in mind that the most valuable resource on a planet next to human beings is data. Data is more valuable than oil, more valuable than gold. And most don't realize that, but that's the new gold rush.
Without data, there's no AI. It's as simple as that.
Exactly.
AI, but for data, there's no AI. But for data, there's no SEC, SES, whatever, all that cookie, clickbait, all that. Without data, there's none. There's nothing like that. And I would dare to say, in my inexperienced self, without data, there's no internet. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sydney.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And even prior to our digital sciences, I mean, data, it's a way of looking at something that we've done and assessing whether or not we got the outcome that we were seeking, and if not, being able to review that to get us to where we want to be. You know, so just the idea of being able to, there's a story, I won't talk about who it is, but AGOA, which is the African Growth Opportunity Act.
Don't even get
So with that act, there are some countries that have participated in that act, and we're looking to work with some of these countries. And what we've learned recently is that one of the countries has collected no data over the last 25 years of that act. So it makes it very difficult for us to be able to assess how well it worked, where it didn't work, so that as we move forward, we can create these relationships. Because here in the state of Michigan, there's an organization that I'm a part of called GABA, which is the Global African Business Association, who's been able to create relationships on the continent, like these almost like unilateral relationships with Michigan. So not the U.S., but with Michigan, with the Michigan government alone. And then we have some folks in our Senate, and you know, just around. There's a lot of what we call chocolate cities in Michigan. There's Detroit. You know, I'm from Pontiac. There's Benton Harbor. You know, Saginaw. There's a bunch of cities where there's a lot of Black folks. So we've been looking at how we create that relationship with the continent, as well as we've had a lot of people that have migrated from Africa to Michigan. So we're looking to improve the lives of people that have migrated from Africa to Michigan, you know, partially through this growth opportunity gap, because we have relationships with a lot of African Caribbean food marts in our area. But as we're starting to assess, you know, the value of this act that allows people from the continent to actually get goods into America without tariffs, you know, it's I think it's going to set us back just a little bit, because all of that, you know, the last, you know, 10, 20 years have been, the data hasn't been collected to let us know what's worked, what hasn't worked, you know, how we do all sorts of things. So, you know, the idea of being able to like move towards something, gauge whether or not you're getting where you want to go is critical to what we want to build. And one of the things that I wanted to throw back to you, Nduku, is you keep talking about the 24-36. So what I want to throw out at you is a goal. So you have to set a goal for us so that we know what we're reaching towards. And so there's the goal setting process, you know. So like, what is that thing that once we've accomplished it, we know we've accomplished the goal? So what needs to happen to let us know that number one, we need to set a goal. And then number two, we need to know, you know, how we know we've accomplished that goal. And then that way, when we're coming back and you have OBT Social on and we're having these conversations, that there's a goal that sits out there, that everybody, and then the goal has to be a big goal, because it has to include everybody in the chat. You know, it has to include everybody on OBT Social. It has to include everybody in, you know, in your networks.
Has to include all of us globally.
It has to include all of us globally. Yeah. So what is that goal, and what are we reaching for in the next, let's say, 36 months? That way we can at least use data to determine whether or not we're actually moving in the direction of that goal that we want.
So we're going to call it the Liberation Project, right?
Okay.
And maybe we'll find a Ubuntu word so that we can use our own language to describe our liberation.
So what are we liberating? Who are we liberating?
Ourselves.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to jump in. Okay, from
ourselves, our motherland, and ourselves. From exploitation, from oppression, from subjugation, from economic, what are we calling? Warfare. Yeah.
Okay.
Badele calls it economic warfare. I'm going to take that, economic warfare. But
so let me ask you.
Ask.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. So can we go beyond that? So let's assume that we've accomplished liberation. Where do we go from there?
Yes, we can, and we will, and we should figure out how we go. This is what I'm going to say to you. This decision cannot be made by just me, and what I'm going to do is get you, Michael, and others for us to meet next week so that we can start this project. So, and I'm saying next week, and I'm not saying when we have time, because we have 24 to 36 months. So we got to get started today. I would say tomorrow, but I know you all are trying to go do your hot dogs and hamburgers. So next week, we have to figure out a time where we can all meet. I have people in mind. I'll invite them. Hopefully they join, and we need to sit down and together set the goal.
So, so the training that I had with the NLP, which is Neuro-linguistic Programming, there are a whole bunch of really cool tools that they offered us that pull us through this process. Like, I can pull some of those tools out that help us brainstorm, help us kind of refine what it is that we're talking about, until we get to a point where everybody's like, yeah, this feels good, and let's do it.
I'm saying let it be a 4-hour meeting. It's needed. So I'm saying let's sit down for half a day next week and figure out what the problems are and what goals need to be set and how we're going to do that. So this is our challenge. And I know we are all busy, and understandably so, because like you said, the resources are scarce, but we need to make time next week, 4 hours, and I'll send the messages to all the people I'm thinking in mind for next week's meetings. Liseli J Branding, I'm thinking of you all. Mzee Kawana, I see you in the chat. I'm thinking of you as well. Yes. Baruti, I'm thinking of you as well, and many others that I can't name right now. But we all need to come together. And if you're in touch with me directly, and you know I'm going to vet you, like, I'm going to be asking you questions. So if you're talking about, can I bring Susan with me? I'll be like, no, we love Susan, but Susan has to sit on the side. And Susan, I'm using a name to describe a white woman. But yeah, we have Susans in our family. But I'm just saying. So today, the lesson today, outside of all the other lessons we learned, is as soon as possible, if you haven't yet, while we were having the conversation, https://obt.social/ go join now.
And then if I can jump in there with also hbcc.social, which is
say it slowly and I'll type it. Hold on quick. All right, say it.
Yep, it's hbcc.social. So OBT Social, like the interface for OBT Social looks similar to how you might engage a network like Facebook. So it has similar features, but OBT Social has more features. There's some things that you can do on OBT Social that you can't do on Facebook. And like Michael mentioned, we have the same technology that Facebook has. So we have the speed, the capability, anything that Facebook can do, we can do. And we're always taking feedback on how to make the network, the application work better. Then there's HBCC, which it has a very similar interface to YouTube. So it's a video sharing, video distribution site. So the same way that you can do YouTube, you can do HBCC, you can upload your videos, you can watch all of the videos that we have on HBCC, which stands OBT Social, of course, OBT, Our Black Truth, HBCC, Historically Black Content Creators. So definitely come on, bring your content. You can have conversations there in a way that you can't have on these other platforms.
Is it just hbcc.social?
Yes, correct.
Just that's it? Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to put it up.
That's
so
correct.
Here's the thing, WanaUbuntu. In the next 2 months, Kumbukeni is going to move out of YouTube and go to hbcc.social. We will not be on YouTube anymore, moving in 2 months. So go get an account and be there. I know we all talk about, but we need to reach our people. It's about time we start taking action. Like we can't keep talking.
And definitely, I mean, like YouTube has two, I don't know I know Facebook's got like 2 billion people. I don't know how many YouTube has right now. But you can funnel those people, use them together, use all of the tools that you have available to you to help all of us, kind of move forward. But use them all, use Facebook, and maybe you can create exclusive content that only shows up on HBCC or OBT Social. But definitely,
the main content is going to be on hbcc.social, and then the little here we are. You need to come home and join us.
You need it exactly.
Because our message is not for white folk.
Yeah.
Kenny's message is not for white folk.
Yeah.
Kenny conversations are not for white folk. So why are we in white spaces? And if we have a space for our people that has already been built, we're moving. In 2 months, Kumbukeni is moving. It's not even about the money. We are already at the point where on YouTube now we're making money. We're going to figure out the money and everything with Michael and Sidney. But I am telling you today, as truth as the sun rose this morning, Kumbukeni in 2 months. When is today? June is next week, right? So June, July, August 1st, Kumbukeni is no longer going to be on YouTube. We're going to be on hbcc.social. If you see me on YouTube, it's because my brother's on the Imaginal cable and have not moved yet there. And that's why I'm there for them to help them grow. Otherwise, Kumbukeni, just Kumbukeni, is going to be starting August 1st on hbcc.social. So join if you're interested in the conversations we have. Go on. Michael and Sidney, any last words? Man, I got so much, and I knew I was going to be a student today. And you get like this, and this is a feeling as overwhelming as it is that I enjoy, because it means I learned. Like it feels like my brain is like a balloon that has been blowing up. That's how much I've taken in. And after this, I usually need to sit or listen to music so that I can digest and process it, right? So last words, please.
Yeah, I want to say on HBCC, whenever you go there, do a search, because sometimes people go there and just look at what pops up, but do a search on African or any topic that you might want, And then that's when the results, and you'll start to see all the content that's there. So I just wanted to put that out there. And then if anyone needed to reach me, my email is mthompson@obtsocial.com. mthompson@obtsocial.com. If you have any questions, comments, or anything like that. And Sidney, you about to say something?
Yep, I just wanted to say that we have applications, like we have HBCC, we have OBT Social. There are other applications that we have already in production. Michael just mentioned we have an application that's very similar to WhatsApp, or it's a communications application. And then there's some other ones that are going to be coming out. And then outside of the applications, like we're doing consulting work. We're building networks. There's some governments in West Africa that we have a relationship with, where we're going in to build data centers and do a lot of the things that we're talking about doing. So when you think about OBT Social, just understand that there's a lot that goes on underneath the hood. And we want to reach out, because one thing that I do believe about Michael and myself is that we really are seeking to create the type of goal that, or the type of products that will bring, Africa, continental people on the continent, as well as people in the diaspora, into some type of way where we can, communicate with each other and resume, our evolutionary path, in a way that we were working before it was interrupted.
I like that word, resume, right?
Yes.
And again, it's reminding me of Mama Kanyisile's book, because she shows what we were before and she makes a clear demarcation. And in fact, I think she's using a different color when the invasion happens. So we have to go back here before the invasion happens and continue beyond the interruption and rebuild and build and rebuild. Yeah. I am so grateful to both of you. Let me quickly see if we can run through, because we didn't, and I know my people, like my community, gets disappointed when we don't do the questions. So let's quickly see if we have questions that you can both answer. I know we are beyond the time, but again, state of emergency. I'm sorry, y'all. It literally is a state of emergency. So you're welcome. As I was about to say, I'm sorry for staying long, but no, you're welcome. Hamjambo Kumbukeni, so here. Can OBT quickly outline the benefits to Africa of WanaUbuntu being users of OBT? How can African diasporans benefit specifically?
All right, so we benefit because, first of all, any revenue that's generated stays in the Black community, whether it's in the diaspora and or the continent. And our focus is different than all of these other platform owners. All the other platform owners do not look like you. So that's a big part of it. And see, we have proven that we're about our people. We've taken people to Ghana and, had them there, met kings and chiefs and everything else. We've helped the people. I participated in setting up foundations to feed people on the continent, to clothe people and things like that. Whereas, when you look at Facebook and Google and all of that, they'll come to Africa or to, the inner city in the diaspora and donate less than 1% of their profits. And that's over a multi-year period. And we're clapping, not realizing that this is just pennies for them. And, but our whole attitude is, it's by us, for us, and that's the bottom line. And you have input into what we do, and every person that sits on our board looks like you. So we have a community advisory board that consists of 27 people, and all of them are people that have been fighting for our liberation, both on the continent and in the diaspora. So those are just a couple of the benefits right there, right off the top, that should mean a whole bunch. And we're not taking the money out of your hands and taking it to some other group of people.
And on top of that, the thought left my mind. Let's move on. All right. Michael, I feel like you need to address this. It's not a question, but there is something that needs to be said about this statement. Can you see it?
Oh, yep. Okay. Actually, I should be one of the richest people on the planet, but the problem is, right, I decided to care about other people instead of just about myself.
Thank you.
So that's what really is causing that rift. Because right now, if I really said to myself, I just want to quit because it's so difficult getting our people behind this, that sometimes I say, man, I just want to quit, focus on myself. I can make all the money I want. But that's the wrong thing to do, because it's not in me to do that, because that's not the most important thing for me. But doing it the way that I'm doing it, I can help countries make billions and billions of dollars and replicate that across the continent. Because if you look at the United States and, you know, all the technology companies that are here, just the US tech companies, they make billions of dollars each themselves for the United States. But just imagine if all 54 countries in Africa had tech companies that were doing the things like what we're doing and other things, how much money can be made. So it's a lot more to be made if we actually share our thoughts instead of just, you know, hoarding it for ourselves. I can make $2 billion for myself, but if this is shared, it can make trillions for our people. So that's the whole reason for this. And it's not like I'm starving or anything like that.
That too, right. This Western exploiter mentality that you have to be a billionaire to be happy. Like,
Right.
what the hell? Like,
Right.
I'm sorry, Osei, I love you, my brother, but this is a mental colonization that you need to work on. And I'm saying it with all the love. Like, seriously, when you get some time, sit and think, what makes me think like this? And then go do some work and stop thinking like this. You don't have to be a billionaire to be happy. In fact, we all need to start moving to a place where we intentionally make sure we're not millionaires. Because for you to be a millionaire means exploitation is happening somewhere. Right? It's as simple as that. This statement was said, I wanted to highlight it because it's really important. Really important. It goes to what you were saying, Sidney, where you held me accountable. If I'm going to be sitting here pointing out we have 24 to 36 months, what's the plan, right? You have the West, and this is the West telling us to take on, and even if it was a blackity black man, let's take Ruto, he's really dark. Even if it was Ruto who got on these airwaves and said that Agenda 2063, and you were told that Ruto has come up with it, it's not Ruto. Ruto received a call from a white man, and then the white man said, go in public and announce it. 2063 has white fingers all over it. Anything that tells you as Africa, you need to wait 10 years to be developed, has white fingers all over. So something that is for us, by us, should say we need change immediately. So Agenda 2024, Agenda 2025, and Agenda 2025 is built based on the success and the failures of 2024. That's how we need to start moving forward, Africa. Forget about Agenda 2062. Who has time to wait for that? Like, seriously? Anyway, I don't know if the two of you want to share thoughts on that Agenda 2063.
No, I'm in agreement with you. I mean, the time is now. Always. It always has been and always will be. The time is now.
Oh, look at this. There you go. So I'm going to connect you with all these people who are offering help. You already connected with them, so I don't know if you're aware of that.
Those are my guys.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Anyone else see a question that we need to point out? I'm running through them now.
Someone asked. Oh, go ahead, Sidney.
Yeah, I was just gonna piggyback on what Michael said earlier too about the benefits of OBT Social. I've had content taken down before, you know, on the networks, and that's one of the things that we offer through OBT Social is that when you post, you know, of course we don't want crap. Nobody wants crap. You know, we want to have, you know, entertainment is fine. You know, intellectual dialogue is fine as well. But sometimes we communicate in a way that makes other people uncomfortable. We say things that they don't necessarily believe or they don't want to believe because it threatens their position. You can say those things on our platform. You can talk to your other Black brothers and sisters on the platform about things that you have deemed important for the Black community. So that's another benefit that you get by using OBT Social's applications is that we can have these conversations without the risk of those conversations being taken down.
Without the white gaze that always gets offended when you say something, when you tell them what they are. I literally, honestly, let's go to a joke, right? At the place where I was working, I called them white man. So I said it so often, they started getting uncomfortable. I'm like, wait, hold up. You have for centuries been calling yourself a white man, but because a bold African woman who has no hesitation accusing you and indicting you based on your whiteness is calling you white man, now you're trembling in your white fragility, and then now you want to punish me for calling you white man. You see what I'm talking about?
Oh yes.
It's
yes, absolutely. And that's going to continue.
Yeah.
That's going to continue. I mean, they're going to protect their interests. And honestly, I don't have a problem with them doing that. I think what's most important is that we protect ours.
Yeah, I agree. There's another question. What are your thoughts about satellite communications as an interim solution as new infrastructure is being constructed? I'm all about interim solutions. Good. This is someone who's thinking, what can we do now while we build the bigger picture?
Well, see, right now, when it comes to satellites, that's something else that I have a lot of experience designing and architecting. Satellites, from my perspective, would not be a good solution. Reason being is on the continent, you have your rainy seasons. So you have rain fade when it comes to satellite. So which means your bandwidth for your internet will drop down next to nothing. You won't be able to stream videos in a practical manner. It gets terribly expensive, and satellites are limited as to the amount of bandwidth that the transponder can accommodate. So, satellites, it'll work if you want really basic communications, but there's so many things that can interfere with satellite. And that's why Elon Musk has to put up 2,000, 3,000 satellites. So if each satellite costs you, say, $50 million times 2,000, that's a lot of money spent on an interim solution. So that's why satellites will be impractical in that particular application. But a better interim solution would be, and someone may mention in one of the other questions about spectrum. The governments control the spectrums. And in the United States, we're using mostly digital, and they claim back all the analog. We can use analog spectrum on a continent to deliver internet access. So that would work. And in order to
explain what spectrum is, because I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a frequency that's used to deliver data wirelessly. So you need a certain frequency, just like when you listen to the radio and you might turn to a channel that's 102.3, that's a frequency. And the spectrum is all the numbers on your radio. That's the whole spectrum that you can choose a certain frequency within that spectrum. So that's typically owned by the government, but it's only needed for wireless devices. But if you have internet that's connected like through fiber optics that comes to your house and you plug into the wall, that does not require a spectrum. Only wireless requires spectrum. And the government controls that spectrum. So someone had a question about, it says, Michael, the only way to build the internet from the ground up is to own spectrum, which is sold by the FCC, if there's another way. So the other way is the physical, because the internet started physically, whereas you had the fiber bringing it to your community, and then to your house, and then you had to buy the service from your phone company and plug into the wall. So that did not require any spectrum. So that's really the only way to do it. And see, even using that would give a lot of people internet access. But having the spectrum makes it easier to deploy, because then you don't have to dig up the ground as much in order to lay infrastructure. Because on the continent, most homes don't come pre-wired with phone service. So that's, so that's kind of the difference, but hopefully I answered that question. Yeah.
You did, and I thank you for that. And I've been pushing on for that, and I'm told, Duko, it's impossible. We have so many, it's going to take generations for us to build that. I'm like, let's get started then. Like, why are we talking? Let's get started. So let's get started where they started and build our own language of virtual communication. And I intentionally did not say internet because internet is theirs. Just the term internet and what it means is theirs. So we have to build and decide what we are going to call our own virtual communication. State 55, Mzee Kawana, yes, you're going to come on soon and talk about State 55 and what that is. The Kiswahili classes, we are about to start the beginner class, but we're going to be putting out, there's a brother in the community helping us build an app where you'll be able to go and purchase each class. We're going to work with OBT. We're going to work with everyone to see how we can make these available and efficient. So basically, if you want to take the prerequisite class, you pay $49.99. You get access to the app, and you can take your own time in learning. The live classes, we just finished the prerequisite. We're going to start the beginners in June. If you are if you're a beginner in learning Ubuntu, you must take the prerequisite before you take the beginners, because you're learning a foundation of vocabulary that will be necessary. So reach out to us for more information. I'm going down. Yeah, I think we're done. What's the speed on analog spectrum? Does it matter right now?
Well, the thing is, the speed for analog spectrum can range, but you can easily get on the low side 40 megabits per second up to about 300 and something megabits per second. And see, that's changing as technology increases. The thing about the analog spectrum is that you can cover a much wider area. So think about this. Back in the day, before we had like digital television, we had those antennas sitting on top of the TV, right? And we could be 40 miles from that television tower, but still get a television signal. Analog internet will work the same way. So the further away you are, of course, the slower it'll be, but imagine one wireless tower covering 40 miles. That would be a good interim solution for the continent because it is so big.
Yeah, we're asking just one country to step up. Just one country. The leaders who are going to listen to this, the influencers who have the leaders' ears who are going to listen to it. Anyone who's going to be shaking some hand and has the opportunity to say something to someone who can take action. We just need one country to start. One out of the 54 to start, so that we can show how it can be done there, and then we can move on to the next ones. But most important, and this is to the AU, I know you are all infected with Westernness in your structure, who pays your money and all that, but you need to start pushing for all military bases that are foreign to get out of Africa. That is something we are requesting of you, African Union. This has to be urgent. It has to be an emergency. They all have to leave. All right, Michael, Sidney, goodbye. Words. One last thought. What are the takeaways? What's the takeaway? What's the takeaway that everyone should walk out? There's a lot, right? So what's the takeaway that they should take today with them?
I'll jump in. I think it's going back to the psychological. It's possible. Whatever we're talking about here, and even some things beyond what we're talking about, they're all possible. So you have to move from that space of possibility, as opposed to what can't happen, because either way it goes, we have to get up every day and put energy in some direction. So if you're going to put energy in some direction, you might as well put it in the direction of the solution that you seek. So it's all possible. Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah, and for me, the takeaway today is the sense of urgency that we will see the digital colonization of our people within our lifetimes if we don't step up and make a change right now. And if that digital colonization happens, we will not be able to break it for more than 1,000 years. See, this is why how we're taking back our land and all of that. And you notice there's not a whole lot of fight with regards to us taking back our land. Now, pay attention to that, because if this would have happened 30, 40 years ago, there would have been military action against the African countries. But if you notice, there has not really been no military action. There's been a lot of talk, and that talk is to just put on a good show, because they know in the background, we're going to digitally enslave and colonize you. We don't need to physically colonize you. We're going to do it digitally. So while we're focused on taking this land back, which we need to take back, but while we're focused on that, they're coming in and saying, let us give you low-cost internet, high-speed internet. Let us build your infrastructure for you. And when we're saying, oh, yes, come and build it. Yes.
How wonderful.
Right, exactly. And they're just like, they're just like, we couldn't have it.
And that's what they're saying in the rooms.
They're saying, right. So by the time we notice, then it's too late. But that's why we're sounding the alarm right now, because they did not count on the variables of having someone like all of us on this call, someone like myself that was at the beginning of the internet here in the US, to kind of foresee what the strategy is, how all this stuff progresses. So that was a variable that they did not see. So now we have the opportunity to say, hold on, we need to start doing for self. So to me, that's the most important thing right now for Africa, besides for electricity. But the most important thing is that digital infrastructure, because the cryptocurrency will run across it, all banking will run across it, all medical, all energy, all everything runs across that infrastructure. So,
and I know I asked you for the last word because I was going to close, but I'm going to ask you a question. But before I ask you a question, I'm going to make it plain and simple, and correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is all those cables need to be cut.
yeah,
They need to be disconnected from the continent.
The continent needs to build their own.
The pink slip and parking, right?
Well,
Google needs to pink slip parking.
Okay, well, let me say this. They might not have to be cut, but we need to own it and know how to work it and know we got them out of the system. We need to tell Google, Facebook, and all the rest, if you really mean to help us, let us have control over the entire infrastructure that you built, and we'll be the gatekeepers to this infrastructure. And you train us on how to use it, or we have some of our diasporan brothers and sisters that know how to do this, control it. That's what we need to do. We just need to get their hands off of it and lock them out. We don't need it.
And if they refuse, we cut, right? Because
then that's when you cut.
All right, good. Here's my question to you that it just came through as you were talking, and it's important to ask this because it is something that needs to be addressed. Do you understand what's the term? The consequences of you talking like this on a public space?
Mm-hmm.
All right, yep. What are the consequences? Like, let's talk as if we're talking to children right now, Michael.
Yeah.
What are the consequences?
The consequences are there can be all kinds of things, brought up against you. Like, for example, they can try to trump up some tax issue or something, just to make it more difficult for you. Or they can, try to just harass you, do little things to annoy you, or to keep you from facilitating this. But that's why you have to surround yourself with so many like-minded people, because it makes it a lot more difficult. One person, they can do that to, but hundreds and thousands of people, they can't. So there's always consequences when you speak openly and publicly about, what you're going to do, what you want to do, and all of that. But at the same time, a lot of times they don't take you seriously, because a lot of people have talked about what they were going to do and this and that, and they like, them Negroes ain't going to do nothing. That's what they say, and they just wait and see what happens and what materializes. So so it's a
and there's the real threat of your life, right, being taken, because they realize you're a threat.
Yeah, it could be if if you start making these inroads and all of that. But that's only when you're standing by yourself. Because if you're, again, there's power in numbers.
Yeah.
So if there's a bunch of people moving in a direction, they can get rid of 100 people, and you still got 10,000 more moving in the same direction. So that's why the United States never wanted to go to war with China, because they said, we don't even have enough bullets for all those people. So.
And therefore, the urgent need for us to unite beyond borders, right?
Yes.
But given that question and given your answer, why do you not hesitate to continue speaking the way you're speaking?
Because, well, first of all, I look at it as, I will be protected. God will protect me, because when I look at my life and how everything has happened, there's a method and a purpose to it. And I'm not out here, preaching hate or anything else, and all of that. I'm talking about doing for self. And doing for self means that it could impact, their bottom line as well. But, when they look at my background and my history and all of that, and they might not care, but it's nothing nefarious behind it.
Yeah.
And again, you know, that's another reason why I've gotten connected with so many people, because it, you know, offers protection and all of that. And they still know too, at the end of the day, sometimes I feel like saying later for all this, you know, because it's hard getting my own people behind it. So, and they're counting on that, you know, they're counting on that.
That is the unfortunate truth. Our biggest barriers are our own people.
Yeah, exactly. So it's easier to really just get a whole bunch of black people just against it and not supportive of it and everything else. And, you know, and that discourages 99.9% of us.
Yeah. So here's the message, having said that, because this message is important on top of everything that we all learned. Whatever comes out about Michael, whatever comes out about Sidney, whatever comes out about Nduku, we don't care as a community. I don't care how bad it is. We don't care, because Nduku, Michael, and Sidney are working on something really important that our lives are dependent on. Once we achieve that goal, we can sit Nduku, Sidney, and Michael and talk to them about, hey, this thing that was said, was it true? But we have to get there. We have to act like we're in war. In other words, just like they, when they're in war, and this is a bad example, but I'm just going to go there so that you understand how dire it is. Just like they have their soldiers raping and killing carelessly and all that, but they let that skip because they're at war, and then it's dealt with once they're finished, once they win and they get home. That's how we're going to do. We're at war. Anything comes out on Michael, we cannot step back to listen to what they're saying. We're on a path of movement. So we are behind Michael's work. We are behind OBT no matter what comes out. That is the energy we need to all have until we get to our goal where we are liberated. We have our defense mechanisms on point, and we can sit Michael down and talk to him about whatever comes out. But until then, we're focused. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Michael, Sidney, don't leave yet. Let's close because it's now beyond 2 hours. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying. Siku njema.